Now, you're going to want to pay attention to this story. A Brooklyn man lost his $1 million home over an unpaid water bill. That bill, by the way, it's worth less than 1% of the value of his property.
It's a story that we first told you about over the summer that went viral, sparking outrage and a rally in the man's community. And now lawmakers are taking action, and so are the man's attorneys.
So over the last couple of years on this channel, we've covered stories that relate to squatters invading people's property, making themselves either fake leases or fake bills that say that they're actually renting said property, and the homeowner trying to get them out, only to discover in places like the city of New York that when the police show up and it's a landlord-tenant dispute, it's actually a civil matter and you need to take them to housing court, where of course the fraudulent tenant, the squatter, who is trying to steal property from the legitimate homeowner, is granted all sorts of privileges and immunities that the property owner does not get. A perfect example of that is what I just said earlier on about how the eviction issue is a civil matter. However, if a person actually tries to remove somebody who does not belong in their property from said property, that ends up becoming a criminal issue. And of course, that ends up leading to a situation where the property owner is often arrested and charged with a crime, even though, again, the person who broke into a home to steal said home is in fact the criminal in that particular situation. But more evidence that when you actually own something, you have less rights in the city of New York is this story out of Flatbush, Brooklyn, where a man who paid off his mortgage in like 2018 ultimately ended up not realizing that he had a water bill that was past due, and rather than get the proper notification, rather than being sent to landlord-tenant court or any kind of special court where he's given a lawyer and multiple chances in order to fight back against the eviction of him from his own property, the city of New York actually sold his water bill into a trust, and even though the home is worth nearly $1 million, this unpaid water bill of $5,000 was used as justification for people to show up to his property, drill in his locks, order him to leave, because guess what? That property is now stolen by the city of New York, and this is what we're going to talk about today. How you have absolutely no rights when you own something, but for some reason, of course, if you're a criminal, you have unlimited and additional rights. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Have you noticed anything good happening after we aired your story?
Yes, sir.
What?
A lot of things happen good because of the media, my lawyer, and everybody come to my aid.
Fillmore Brown is fighting to keep his home, a home in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. He works 7 days a week for decades to pay off.
I cannot sleep. As soon as I lay down, put my head down, I wake up.
This is how he found out his home was sold out from under him, when strangers started to drill off the lock to his front door in the middle of the night.
I hope to get back my home.
Now look, I know the city of New York heavily restricts the Second Amendment, but in my humble opinion, if you show up at my property in the middle of the night and you start drilling the locks off my door, I'm going to defend myself against you because you are in fact an intruder, especially if I'm under the impression that paying off my mortgage actually means that I own my property. However, of course, it's the city of New York. Everything is ass backwards. So the person breaking in the middle of the night in order to throw people out of this building is 100% justified because the city of New York allowed this to happen. They basically stole this property from this individual, didn't even tell him that it was the case. And if he were to fight back against these individuals that are breaking in, he would be arrested and charged with a crime and likely held without bail. I mean, you could commit a multitude of crimes in the city and state of New York, and it's not even bail eligible. You get released same day automatically.
Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it, not bail eligible. Not a serious crime.
But defending your property, defending somebody else, as Daniel Penny found out, those are the most serious crimes. Those are the ones that you're going to be sent to prison for because how dare you, you garbage citizen, just because you think you own something because you worked for 7 days a week over the course of decades to pay it off does not mean that's yours. We're going to take it, and we're going to take it under the justification that you didn't pay your water bill.
Back in 2019, just after he paid off his mortgage, Brown says he didn't know he had an outstanding $5,000 water bill. The city sold the unpaid bill to what's called a trust, which is a group of investors. It was then up to those investors to collect the money with interest. When the balance wasn't paid, the $900,000 home went into foreclosure and was sold at auction. That's when the strangers showed up. Brown says he had no idea it happened.
So right here, you guys can see the obvious flaw in the system that the city of New York has set up when it comes to these unpaid bills. So you obviously need to pay your water bill. And I'm going to say no excuses for this homeowner not actually paying it. And if you don't pay it, then yes, they can put a lien on your property in order to ensure that you do so. But of course, this unpaid water bill is $5,000 based on the fact that he's taking rental income from 2 different tenants. And of course, this guy actually works. It should be no problem for him to pay it, or at least get into a payment plan in order to, not lose his property. But the thing is, when the city sells the bill into a trust, it gets deducted from the books, so you can't just look up and figure out that you owe this to the water company anymore.
Once his bill was put into the trust, take a look. It was deducted from the city's billing system as if it never existed.
Because guess what? You technically don't owe that bill to the water company anymore, and then it is up to the people in the trust to provide you with adequate notice in order to make sure that you pay the bill, in order to make sure that they can't take your property.
I believe that Mr. Brown will get his house back.
His attorney filed a new lawsuit against the city, claiming Brown never received the proper warning notices.
Did you ever receive a notice?
No, sir.
He lives on the top floor of his home and rents out the 2 other floors to other families. The city claims someone was served with paperwork at the home during the height of the pandemic.
I can't imagine. We were living in a ghost town, New York City.
But of course, property in the city of New York, and property specifically in Brooklyn, specifically in East Flatbush, is infinitely more valuable than obviously a $5,000 water bill. So if you're in the trust, you're actually disincentivized to provide adequate notice to the people that are supposed to pay you back the bill. So what ultimately ends up happening is that you pay pennies on the dollar for a $5,000 bill, and that allows you to get nearly $1 million, which is an excellent return on your investment. And again, I will point out that if you're in a situation where you're a property owner in the city of New York, all of your rights are gone. They're all taken away. There's all these different various methods for the city to rip you off, for them to take control of your property or take your property. Yet, if you are breaking the law, if you're a criminal, if you violate our society, guess what? You have basically unlimited rights. You have additional rights on top of what a regular ordinary citizen has. And obviously, this is going to lead to chaos. This is going to lead to immense problems. And in this particular case, this man is lucky that the local ABC affiliate picked up his story, much in the same way that that woman who was arrested for kicking a squatter out of her property was also lucky that it was picked up by the local ABC 7 station. But in reality, this could have just been allowed to happen. And what we find out throughout the course of this segment is that it's happened multiple different times across the city of New York, specifically in Brooklyn, because again, the property in Brooklyn is so much more valuable than any bill that you're going to buy off of any kind of utility company.
Mr. Brown isn't alone. In his area of East Flatbush alone, more than 1,000 homeowners had their properties put into the tax lien sale. More than half were for unpaid water bills.
Now again, the reason this is happening is by design. East Flatbush is a very up-and-coming area that real estate is incredibly valuable. And of course, rather than, actually grant rights to the property owner and approve better zoning in order to, actually have more stuff being built in this area, the city of New York wants to take these properties on behalf of their trust, on behalf of whoever's donating money to them, and they want to give it to them for pennies on the dollar so they could do whatever they want with it. A small landlord like this who worked 30 years in order to pay off his mortgage, who's only enjoying 1/3 of his own property because he rents out the other 2 floors to other individuals, that guy, he's a scumbag. We need to just drop him off. We need to get rid of him. And by the way, this is something that is happening specifically in this neighborhood. And while it is important to pay your water bills, and I am in favor of enforcement mechanisms, in reality, this is a corrupt set of incentives that ultimately end up incentivizing this outcome right here, which is piss poor notification in order to make sure you get the entirety of the property. That doesn't make any sense. That's not logical. That's not sensible, again, unless your plan is to, actually take over the property. And the funny thing is that these people actually target people who pay off their mortgage, and the reason they do so is because once you paid off your mortgage, you're not in line with the bank in order to make sure the property is controlled by either you or the bank. So in that particular situation, you're all alone, and this is what they're taking advantage of.
It was a shock, and I said this was definitely a grave injustice.
Councilmember Chris Banks has submitted city legislation that he says would improve the notification process and remove water bills from being sold into a trust in the first place. Last year, state lawmakers tried to pass 2 similar bills, but they didn't go anywhere.
This is something that has to change. You can't play around with people's lives.
In response, the city said, "We will review the legislation being proposed and look forward to working with our city partners to continue supporting homeowners. And while we cannot comment on pending litigation, the city has implemented reforms to give property owners more time, information, and resources to pay their debts."
So we hear from a city councilman that represents this area, and he is proposing a bill at the citywide level in order to address this issue, because obviously you have corrupt incentives that actually make sure that these people are unlikely to get the notifications about the lien against their property. So that way, of course, it can be taken and sold out from under them. And what we ultimately end up finding out is that the reason this city council person is doing this now is due to the media attention, because guess what? Statewide, with the progressive legislature that has invaded New York State ever since 2019, they've had multiple bills to address this issue based on constituent complaints. And guess what? Those bills dead on arrival, never participated in it. And the reason for that is because the people behind these trusts want the ability to take your property for things like unpaid utility bills. They want to buy a bill. Again, when it's $5,000 the bill, they actually buy it for like 10 cents on the dollar. So we're talking about $500, and that gets you a nearly $1 million property. Who is going to pass on a deal like that? Who is not going to take advantage of that particular system? Obviously, the well-connected are going to take advantage, and the city and the state of New York are perfectly fine allowing that to happen until you notice, until you shine a light on it, until you give it the attention that it deserves, because that's who these people are. They don't care about your private property rights. In fact, they want to undermine it. And by the way, we are now on the cusp of electing a Democratic socialist, aka a socialist, aka somebody who, by the way, has clearly shown to be a communist, to the mayorship of the city of New York. So what do you think is going to happen when Mamdani gets into power and these kind of schemes are just running amok on the city of New York? Obviously, he's going to accelerate them. Obviously, he's going to make them worse. And the reason for that is because he wants to take control of your property. He's made that clear in multiple different videos, and again, all of his time in public life. So yeah, in this particular situation, it's absolutely disgusting, but it's not surprising. Obviously, you lose rights owning property in the city of New York. You gain them when you try to steal that property, and that's the way the system has been created.
I give thanks for my lawyer and you guys for run to my aid. Without you guys, I couldn't make it.
Now, look, obviously, I'm happy to shine a light on this particular story. Obviously, the homeowner or the property owner right here is incredibly grateful to the news media for giving him this attention, and hopefully he does get his property back. It was stolen from him by the city of New York, but I just also want to highlight the fact that we're talking about a black guy who owns property, who built himself up, worked hard his whole life, did everything right, and this is who the city of New York is going out of their way to screw over, because again, they don't want you to be successful if you're a minority. They want to point to statistics related to your failure and use that failure to justify more crazy government intervention. That is what you're seeing right now before your very eyes. But again, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the city of New York stealing somebody's property just for the hell of it. Till next time.